Sit there and hear me speak, you're going to be a part of it from the beginning to the end. So we'd like to begin with the message this morning. The question is, what child is this? Last week's message was the details that the Lord had given us, both in the Old Testament and the New Testament, in regards to Jesus, and especially in the Old Testament in regards to Jesus' birth. One of the most notable prophecies in the Old Testament of the birth of Christ came through the prophet Micah. And Micah, speaking roughly 700 years before the birth of Christ occurred, the prophet Micah gave this message. Be thou Bethlehem Ephratah, though thou be little among the thousands of Judah, yet out of thee shall he come forth unto me, that is to be the ruler of Israel, whose goings forth have been from of old, from everlasting. It's here where Micah had prophesied it would be this little town of Bethlehem. It was just a small town. The town with a population at that time of roughly 1,000 people at the time when Jesus was born. The numbers increased, though, at the time of Christ's birth because of a census that was ordered so that the people would be taxed, so that Joseph and Mary would have to travel to Bethlehem to pay their taxes and to be part of the census that was being taken. It's said that Mary and Joseph, and Mary being 9 months pregnant at this time, they walked or journeyed about 90 miles to the place of Joseph's lineage, this little town of Bethlehem. Oh, little town of Bethlehem. said the same words, I think, every time because I don't know what to say. You bless my heart. You bless my family. And we love each and every one of you. And when you're not here, you're missed. And I guess I'd add to it, I know I don't deserve this, but I don't deserve anything that God has blessed me with. But only because of who God is. He continues to bless us. So thank you. Thank you, Ethan. Your children and your grandchildren can make you proud, can they not? You know, this has nothing to do with with the message today, but talking about making your children making you proud, or your grandchildren making you proud. And I know I've told this before, but you know, we've looked at this in Sunday school class before in Bible study, that you know, there's certain things that have taken place in people's lives, and they've left a marker. It's called an altar. And God had instructed people, as we're studying the book of Genesis, we see where God had instructed people to erect an altar. And many times it was just stones. And the purpose for it is to remind those when they came by, or when the next generation come by, and they would ask the question, what is this altar for? It would be given to them saying, well, this is where God met so-and-so. This is where such and such took place. It was a reminder of what God had done in someone's life, whether it be in an individual's life or in a nation. And I believe that there's those markers in our lives as well. As I said, I know that I've shared this before, but children making you proud. Back to 9/11, I believe that was a marker in all of our lives. All of us remember what happened at 9/11, 2001. The World Trade Centers come tumbling down. We'd have been attacked on our own soil by a foreign enemy. And it was during that time that my wife and I had supper with Jennifer and Jason at Christo's in Plymouth. And only a day or two had passed. Maybe I don't think it was that night. Maybe a day or two had passed, and Jennifer, sitting across the table, said, "Dad, doesn't this scare you?" And I said, "No, it doesn't. No, I'm not scared." "And why?" I said, "Because everything's in God's hands. God's in control. And God has us in his hands." And as that conversation went on that evening, that's an altar in my life. Christo's may seem to be a funny place for an altar, but that's where it's at. And Jennifer says, "Well, Dad, I'm coming to church Sunday." And Jennifer and Jason's been coming to church ever since. Shortly after they gave their hearts to Christ, were baptized. Years later, they had Lydia, and Ethan came a few years later. And I'm so proud of all of them as my children and grandchildren, because it's Jesus Christ who changes lives. He makes such a drastic change in our life. Such a change that the things that we used to like to do, we no longer do them. And the things that we didn't pursue at one time that we're now in pursuit of. As I said in Sunday school class this morning, I said, I just hope there's one thing, that when you leave this morning, that you have a greater understanding of God and his word than you did when you came in here. I believe this life is about knowing Christ more each and every day. I pray that as this year fades away, and as the new year approaches, that each and every one of us have a greater life in Jesus Christ. And I believe that the way that that comes about is by spending more time with him and in his word. To become more and more like him. You know, the songs that Ethan played this morning, I know the first one was very recognizable, the first Noel. That last one was What a Beautiful Name. What a beautiful name is the name of Jesus. Going back to the time of Jesus' birth, there was a large number there in Bethlehem, but they didn't gather there. That number did not increase, and they didn't gather in Bethlehem at that time because of the birth of Christ. It's because they were paying their taxes. There was no expectation, no announcement made of the arrival of a king. Only a few were told of the event. There were shepherds that were given the announcement. Luke tells us that there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field and keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them. And the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were sore afraid. And the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all the people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord. See, it was the angel of the Lord that made that great announcement. The promised Messiah had been born. The one who would set his people free came to earth. And as Mary raised her child, she pondered over the things that Jesus did and said. She buried them in her heart, wondering. Can you imagine what it would have been like to have the appearance of the angel of the Lord? Could you imagine thinking about what kind of child this must be for the angel of the Lord to make that announcement? What child is this? And this shall be a sign unto you. You shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with an angel a multitude of heavenly hosts praising God and saying that, Glory to God in the highest, and peace on earth, and goodwill toward men. And it came to pass, as the angels were gone away from them into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, Let us now go even into Bethlehem, and see this thing which is come to pass, which the Lord hath made known unto us. Jesus wasn't born in a palace. There was no royalty in attendance at his birth. But Jesus came to a humble town and to a humble couple. An earthly mother and a man by the name of Joseph, who happened to be a carpenter. And they were given the task of raising this Christ child. This child was like any other that Mary would give birth to. And when she looked at the face of Jesus, she looked at the face of God. And as Jesus grew into adulthood, it was at the age of 30 that he began the ministry to the people, preparing for the time that he would suffer and sacrifice his life. With no place to lay his head, he owned nothing, and he was born in this manger, away in a manger. You know, as we go about our daily lives and as we travel from town to city, we see Christmas being celebrated everywhere. It's the decorations and the nativity scenes that are displayed. School programs are taking place, being performed. There's store displays to promote their Christmas goods. And all of these things draw our minds to that little town of Bethlehem. It reminds us of that first Christmas, a babe being born in a manger, and he came to set his people free from the bondage of sin. He came that you and I might be forgiven. You see, you and I are the reason that he came. As sinners, we could be set free. He came to give us life and life eternal, and he invites all to come and receive the gift that has been given. And as we celebrate Christmas, it takes us back, it reminds us never to forget what it's all about. Let us remember that moment when we invited Jesus into our life, surrendering our life and pledging to follow him, living our life according to his will. And we're called to be faithful to him. Oh, come on. What a precious time of year. A time that we're given to reflect upon those altars, those points in our life that we erect something, a place that we can revisit. One of those times is Jesus Christ coming into this world. But I believe the greatest moment of all is when Jesus Christ enters into our life. When we give that invitation to the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. The King of Kings and the Lord of Lords has to be given permission to come into our life. And we extend that invitation for him to come in and to rule and to reign over our life. A surrender to him. You know, my family hopes that you and your family have a very merry and a blessed Christmas, knowing that he will and always will be faithful to us. So let us be faithful to him. Telling and reminding all what Christmas is all about. Have a merry and blessed Christmas. Would you please stand? Gary, would you close us in prayer this morning?